Cool. All right. So, welcome everybody. Thank you all for showing. Thank you all for showing up. I understand that this class is at a kind of wacky time in the middle of the night on a Wednesday, and it's like still drizzling outside. It's like annoyingly wet. But so thank all of you for showing up. This is a great turnout. Really appreciate that you came all the way to Gates. Yeah, welcome to the Intro to Backend class. I guess we should just get started. So first we'll be going through some logistical stuff, talk about who we are, talk about what this class is going to be about, then we'll just hop right into the content. So, for those of you that haven't already, if you passed the pretest, please just enroll on Student Center. CS 1998, Section 603. Feel free to just enroll directly once you pass the pretest. We're going to be eventually syncing our CMS with Student Center. Right now, the CMS is just filled with the students that filled out the like Google form that we had in the application. So make sure that you're enrolled on CMS so that eventually we can give you your grade for this class. Also, join a campus wire. Have you guys used Ed in your classes? You don't? Okay, cool. We don't have an Ed, but we do have a campus wire, which is pretty similar, except it has a dark mode and it has a mobile app. So if you post on campus wire, I'm more likely to see it because I'll get a notification on my phone. Whereas with Ed, I have to remember to check it, which is kind of a pain. So campus wire is fun. It's also really important, which is why we decided to make it an assignment. So if you are on CMS right now, you'll be able to look at it and find the link in the group code to join, because we're going to be releasing assignment information, deadlines and stuff all through CampusWire. So make sure you're on it. If you're not on the CMS, by the way, please let us know by tomorrow night at the latest. If you've enrolled in the course, if you haven't, we can get that sorted out later. Because the sooner you get on the campus wire, the better, since you'll be able to work on assignments and ask questions just more easily. Cool. Yeah, sorry about the office hour schedule. We're still trying to figure out when our TAs are free to hold them. We will have those figured out within the next couple of days. Just know that what we post for the first week is subject to change within the next couple of days as things settle down and people realize when they're actually free. Cool. So, as you guys know, since you're here in this room, every Wednesday at 8:35 is going to be lectured in this room. But don't worry if you miss a lecture or something. We'll be posting a screen recording alongside the audio to our the Cornell AppDev YouTube channel, which is linked to the textbook. I'll tell you guys where to find the textbook later if you don't know. It's kind of important that you do still come to class if possible, because if you don't, then you don't get to see me pacing around the room and making funny gestures everywhere, which I feel like that's content. Yeah, because classes are on Wednesdays, we're going to give you guys a week to do the assignments. So the first one is actually due next Tuesday at 11:59. Hopefully after today you'll have an idea of how to do it. If you don't, campus wire and office hours. We do, on every single assignment, give you 3 days of leeway. So the assignment's due Tuesday. Oh, I guess, yeah. So we'll extend the deadline of the assignments until Friday at 11:59 p.m. If you submit it within that, you'll just get -2 points off out of 10. So it's essentially a max 80 on the assignment, which for a pass-fail class, not the biggest deal in the world if you feel like you're having a stressful week or something. We get it. The way that we're going to be grading the assignments is we have a suite of test cases we're going to be running. Fear not. We give you the test cases. We'll be giving them to you a couple days after we post the assignment, because we do really want to encourage you take a stab at the assignment without just being code monkeys that program and then run the test cases and be like, I wonder why it's not working. We're also going to encourage other methods of testing your code. So, for example, Gonzalo later in this lecture is going to be using this thing called Postman, which is a cool way of testing a lot of these back-end concepts that we'll be giving you. And especially when you're designing and first writing code, it's a lot better to test with Postman than just run test cases somebody else wrote, so that you get an idea of why what's going on is happening. And then we'll also be looking at like your code style. That's not going to matter very much. It's going to be like maybe a point worth of your assignment. But we do want you guys writing code that we find legible, because if you fail the test cases, we have to look at your code and figure out why. If your code style is awful, then that's really hard. So please write your code nicely. Cool. Right. This was a slide that I added last minute because I realized people might not know. But if you don't know where the course textbook is, it has pretty much all the content we're going to be covered in a written format, if that's how you learn better. If you don't, if you don't like me talking at you all day, mildly hurt, but that's okay. Feel free to just go to the course textbook. The stuff's all there. The course textbook is also where like the assignments are. It's where the API specifications for the assignments are, which you should hopefully know what that means by the end of today. And it has the syllabus, so it'll give you an idea of what we're going to learn, and you can read ahead if you want to. Cool. The slide that we are mandated to put in, but it's true, right? Zero tolerance for academic dishonesty, as with every Cornell course. If you're curious if something violates AI, consult Cornell's academic integrity guidelines. Feel free to email one of us if you're worried about something. Just to give you some examples of things we are okay with, feel free to talk to other people in the class as long as you are not literally like writing the code together or like looking and just copying their code, right? It's totally fine to just like talk with each other and talk about design and stuff like that. If you're using something that you did not write, please just cite it. We're not going to be super like, oh no, you used Stack Overflow, how dare you? Just like, let us know you didn't, it's chill. If you know what GitHub Copilot is, don't use it. That's all I have to say about that. Yeah, if we find out that you have committed academic integrity violation, we are just booting you from the course, because that's easiest for us to do paperwork-wise. Yeah. So, I guess now we'll talk about what's going to happen in this course. I guess I have a quick question. What do you guys think backend is? Does anybody have any thoughts about what they think backend is? Okay, y'all were talking so much before this class started. I want hands. Hey. Yeah, for sure. So if a user is using an app, what she said is the backend is there to manage the data being used by the app. Absolutely. You don't want to have your user download all of YouTube every time they open the YouTube app, right? You want YouTube to just ask its backend to deliver whatever data they need. Maybe what's in their recommended, or if they're watching a certain video, just stream the video and download it as necessary. The backend handles all of that sort of thing. So what we're going to be covering is a lot of data-related things, right? So what's a route? A route is if you access, say, like a URL on your computer. Let's say you go to google.com and then type in a search query. That website that you typed in is a route. It's called, or also known as an endpoint, right? We'll be going into how you create routes, how you make them accessible to other people, and how you can kind of work them into a front end. We'll be talking about databases, right? So going back to the YouTube example, let's say you have your Google and you built this big YouTube thing. You need some efficient way of storing and retrieving all of this information. So you're going to want to store it in a database, which is just a more efficient way of storing and getting this information than like random files in your hard drive. We'll move on to relational databases, abstractions. You'll learn more about that as we go. More techie things that you'll figure out what they mean as we go. I do want to hype on number 7 for a second, though, which is a hack challenge. For those of you that don't know, at the end of this course, you're going to be working with students in the other AppDev courses to actually make a fully fledged app. If y'all have ever done a hackathon before or like know what hackathons are, it's pretty much just an inside AppDev between the courses hackathon where y'all try to put together an app. It's super hype. I don't know. I really liked it when I took the course. I hope you guys enjoy it. It's mildly stressful, but it's fun. This is us. That's Gonzalo. You want to stand up?
Yeah. Alright. You guys hear me in the back? Cool. Alright. Hey everyone, I'm Gonzalo. I'm a senior. Been on AppDev for 6 semesters.
Hey. I'm Rahi. I am a junior. I've been on AppDev for, I don't know, like what, 4 or 5? I can't count that high. Some number of semesters since freshman spring. And yeah, I've been on backend this whole time. Gonzalo switched to the dark side because he started on iOS and just wanted to grow a little more. Yeah. We also have a bunch of TAs. Only one of them decided to show up today because the others are fake. But that's Shungo. He's great.
Hello.
if TAs show up in future lectures, turns out you should keep showing up. During the demo, they can kind of walk around and help you guys as you try to follow along with the code. Cool. So, time for actual content. Today's lecture is going to be hopefully pretty short, and it's about what we call the client-server model. So, in the client-server model, there's two parts. The first one is the client, right? And you can think of this as literally any of your computer, right? This is not a phone. Pretend this is my phone because I left it on that table. This client wants to access some, I don't know, eatery, right? So I open. No.
I'll go back.
Did it. Nice. So I'm trying to access eatery, right? So what it's going to do is it's going to open eatery's front end, and that's going to show you all of the menus, right? It's going to show you all of the dining halls. It's going to display things for you, right? That's what this guy's job is. If you're using a computer, right, any application, those are all clients because you as the user personally interact with them. Meanwhile, the server part of the client-server model is really what we're going to be handling in this class. That's the back end. That's where all the funky Pink Panther stuff goes on behind the scenes, right? A server is just another computer that we have a different name for because it does something slightly different. But at its core, really just a computer in a different place, right? The internet is just a bunch of connected computers that we call different things for slightly different reasons. So the server is going to be what's running the code that we're writing in this class. It's there to, like I mentioned in the YouTube example, centralize all the information. You don't want to have, like, YouTube split across, like, well, you do want to have it split, but you don't want to have the same copy of YouTube split across, like, a billion different servers because that's just a bunch of memory wastage. You maybe want a couple of backups, but that's about it. And so the server is going to be returning information to the clients that they ask for. So the way this is going to work is the client sends something called a request. Oh, okay, I guess that's a later slide. So let's say you're going to google.com, right? The way this URL works is it's split up into a couple different portions. First is HTTP. I hope you guys have seen that before. If not, how? Stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. You don't really need to worry about what it stands for. Just know that it is a very common protocol used over the internet. Recently, people have been switching to HTTPS, which just adds a secure layer. You don't need to worry too much about HTTP. Just know that it is there. The next is google.com. That's what's called a domain name. The important thing to know is that domains are not the same thing as servers. Domains point you to servers. So if you just ask, like, a calculator, what's google.com? Let's say your calculator's like some bougie Inspire and has internet connection. How is it supposed to know where that is, right? It has to somehow translate that string into an address. So you can kind of think of this as a, like, mail analogy. You go to the post office and you're like, hey, I want to send a message to Google. And then the post office is like, cool, well, tell us where they live and you can send a message, right? That's kind of the distinction we're going for here. So the way this works is you communicate with something called DNS. In this example, the address book is a DNS. It stands for domain name system. So you say, hey, I want to know where Google is. And so you ask the DNS spits out numbers back at you, and that's the IP address, or the Internet Protocol address. And then you're like, cool, now that I know where Google is, I can start mailing them messages. The basic idea. So what is a request that you're sending to Google? I've been using that term a little bit. A request is just the client asking the server for something. It can really be anything, and there's a bunch of different ways that the client can send information. The request does include a couple different things, especially if we're working with HTTP. So the request has the URL, right? We have to know where we're going. It has what's called a method. So we have to ask, hey, are you just trying to get information? Do you want to, like, change some information? Do you want to delete something? There's different HTTP methods for that we'll get into. And then a body, which is really what the client is asking for. So if you're opening transit, say, and then you say, hey, I want to get to CTB, it's going to send in its body, hey, this is where I'm trying to go, please give me directions. There's actually some other parts to requests. There's things called headers and some other things, but for the sake of this course, don't need to worry about it. Feel free to ask about it in CampusWire or after class or anything. Cool. Yeah, I pretty much talked about most of that already. Another name for request is endpoint. We're going to call, or sorry, another name for route is endpoint. Now you may realize we talked about google.com as a domain name earlier, but there's a bunch of different things you can do with Google. Like, you've seen websites where they have the big slash afterwards and then a bunch of different things after that. That's the real crux of the route. Google is where all of this is, but then you add the route afterwards to say what you're trying to do there. So google.com/q is saying you want to query Google, or /?q is saying you want to query Google for something. There's different routes for logging in, there's different routes for pretty much anything. And as the backend designers, you get to decide what these routes are, and you get to decide how the information kind of communicates. So if you don't design it well, it's just a pain for other people to work with you, and people won't want to. So, writing's good. Cool. Request methods, cool. So these are called CRUD operations: create, retrieve, update, destroy. These are roughly translated into HTTP methods as post, get, put, and delete. Don't ask me why they got these names other than get. Who knows? Post I kind of get because it's like posting a message or like creating something, but whatever. In practice, post and get are by far the most used HTTP methods. We're going to have you use put and delete in this class because it's good to know why things are designed the way they are, and it's good to use the proper methods. For some reason in industry, people mostly just use post and get. So, the request body. This can pretty much be any way that you want to send information that is possible over an HTTP connection. But what's really common is a JSON file, or not a file, but like a JSON formatted message, or HTML formatted message. HTML is much more common as a response. And it's just saying, hey, this is the information you're going to need from me to complete the request. So let's go back to the Ithaca Transit example. Can anybody tell me what might be in a request body if we're trying to go to CTD for Ithaca Transit? Come on. Hey.
Current location.
Current location, absolutely. Anything else? Destination, sure, yeah, absolutely. So those are two things that might be important. Another couple things might be like when you want to get there, stuff like that. So yeah. Oh yeah, the request body, like I said, is not the only thing that's there. There's also like headers and some other stuff. For the sake of this class, you'll be working with bodies the most, and bodies are really the most communicative part of the request. The other stuff is really like meta information. So here's some examples. In this case, search is our route, right? And then $q equals query is an example of a query parameter. So let's think about that a little bit. Slightly different than request body. So here, this is going to be a GET request, because we just want Google to tell us things. There's nothing really we have to give to Google. One important thing is with GET requests, you almost never send a request body. A GET request is almost always just URL on the route. Now you might say, hey, but Google needs to know what we're searching for. That's what the query parameters are for. So Google is the domain name, and then everything after that is going to be what route we want. So in this case, search is our route. And if you actually type this into Google, I think it'll work, where you can say search $q equals, and then replace query with whatever you want to look up. So if you want to look at pictures of like cute dogs, you can do like $q equals cute plus dog. I think when I was testing, I did that because I like looking at dogs. If you want to have multiple query parameters, you use an and symbol and then just keep connecting them. So a query parameter is just another way of sending information in a request. Except instead of sending it in a request body, it's sent in the URL itself. That's kind of how GET avoids sending request bodies a lot. Here's a post. We're trying to log into Google. This time, we actually need body information. Right? We need to say our username and password. Normally, you would probably be hashing these things when you send them, but just for sake of argument, say that we're just sending them directly. So this is a post request because we're trying to kind of create some information. In this case, we're creating what's called a user session in Google. If you've noticed, a lot of times after you're inactive for a while, things sign you out. That's because your session expired and you have to create a new one. The path is login. And in this case, our request body is in JSON format. Show of hands, how many of you are familiar with JSONs? Cool, that's a decent chunk of you, but for those of you that aren't, a JSON is kind of like a map or a dictionary if you've used Java or Python. The idea is you have open and closed brackets, you have some sort of key enclosed in double quotes, colon another key enclosed in double quotes, and then you just comma delimit however many of them you want. So in this case, our username has a value of JS123, and our password has a value of password, because we have good security standards. So then the response is what the server is going to send back, right? It's going to say, hey, you typed in the wrong password, or like, hey, yeah, we can give you the route information. Responses have a little bit more relevant information than requests. Those are called status codes, and so status codes are just some 3-digit number that's going to be returned along with the response to let you know how the request went. Probably one of the most common ones is error 404. You tried getting something that doesn't exist. 404 is the not found status response. If you've tried accessing websites before, you'll know, normally you don't see this stuff unless you go looking for it. That's because if you have a success response, it doesn't feel the need to show you a status code in your browser. Your browser kind of sorts through the information that's been given back to you and only renders what's necessary. So if you actually try going to that Google, it wouldn't return a JSON, it would return a bunch of HTML information. And your browser just compiles that into something you can see. And then keeps the status code but doesn't show it to you because your grandma doesn't need to know that there was a status code of 200. Cool. So some examples of response codes. 200 is a success response. Anything starting with a 2 is going to be some form of success. 200 is just good job. 201 is success in creation. You don't need to memorize these. If you really want to know status codes, just Google them. Like, there's a bunch of documentation. There aren't too many that really matter. No. So some example responses, if this will click. So in this case, we got a status code of 200 because our search request worked. And pretend we got a JSON body back, which is how many responses we got and what they were. What will actually happen if you try sending this request is it'll give you, like I said before, HTML as a response. So not too fun to read yourself, your browser knows what to do with it. If you try posting to log in, let's say you logged in with the correct information. Good job, success true. Here's whatever the login page is, some sort of data. But let's say you got the password wrong. Then it'll give you a status code of 401 for unauthorized. Who do y'all think decides the status code? Anyone?
Backend design.
Hey, the backend designer decides the status code. So if Google wanted, they could have made this status code like 200. That would be immensely confusing. So people don't. Status codes are really just there to give you more information. You can be as obtuse and horrible with them as you want, but like, don't. Cool. So, in summary, we have the client who sends some sort of request to the server. Say you want to get the menu at, I don't know, like Becker. The server triggers whatever route you asked for. Say you're looking for your YouTube feed. It's like, okay, let me figure out who you are. Let me do some data operation to get that feed for you. And then let me return the response to you. So in this case, after it finishes gathering all of that information, it'll send it back as a response over the internet with whatever status code it feels necessary. Cool. That's the end of the lecture. Does anybody have any kind of questions about what I covered before I get into what's going on this week in the demo? All make sense? Cool. Ask on campus wire, I guess, if you feel uncomfortable asking in class, totally valid. Like I said, your first assignment is due next Tuesday. If from that lecture you're like, I have no earthly idea how to code any of this, that's coming up. Gonzalo will do a demo for you. Cool. Yeah. Action items we'll cover at the end. Don't worry about that for now. And now we stop recording. Perfect.
Okay, show of hands, who has downloaded the starter code for the demo? Oh boy, okay.
Oh, y'all are better than me when I took this course.
All right, so the starter code is on the course textbook, so I can just show you how to navigate to it. You can just go on, well, let me just start from the website. You can go on our website. You can go to the courses on Backend, and then just scroll down, you'll get a link to the textbook. And then from here, you can go to Chapter 1, Routes. And where's the starter code? Yes, here we go. Okay, so yes, the starter code is right here. So feel free to download it. This is recorded, so you can just refer back to it in the YouTube video. But I will get started. So first thing you want to do is open up the starter code. You will see two files. There's an app.py and a requirements.txt. So because we are importing some things in our Python file, we are going to need to install some dependencies first. So to do that, you want to open your terminal, and I can just show you some basic terminal commands if you're not very familiar with it.
Can y'all see that, by the way? Is it big enough?
Yes. Oh, that's a good point. Yes. Okay.
How's that?
Great. Okay. So this is located on my desktop. I mean, one thing I can just do is type in cd, which is just change directory. I can type, well, first what I want to do is I want to type in ls, because if I hit this, I'm going to be able to see all of my folders. And I want to try get into my desktop, so I can just do cd desktop, and then I'm in my desktop. So if I do ls, I will see my source folder. I can do cd source, or what I can also do, just a little shortcut, I can just drag the folder here, and it's going to give me the location. So if you type in ls, you'll see both of these files. So what is the requirements.txt? If I type in cat requirements.txt, you're going to see these weird names, and you'll see versions near them. These are the dependencies. So I want to install these dependencies, but before I install them, I want to install them locally to this folder, because I only want to use them for this project. The way you can do that is using a virtual environment. So to make a virtual environment, you want to type in python-m venv, which is just virtual environment, and then you want to name the folder, which is venv. And that didn't work. Okay, so so you want to do Python 3. You can try both to see if it doesn't work for one of your versions, but it looks like it worked. If I do ls, I have a venv folder right here now. So I made my virtual environment, but I want to activate my virtual environment so that everything is downloaded within this folder locally. And to do that, I can type in dot, which is the current directory, and I want to activate a script inside of this folder, and it's located in venv bin activate. So if it works successfully, you should see this parentheses venv on the left side.
This is slightly different on Windows. You will have to do /venv/scripts/activate, and scripts is capitalized, capital SCRIPTS.
Yeah, if any of you have any issues, just raise your hand and we can go fix them.
I'm a Windows man, so if y'all are having Windows trouble, I got you.
Yes, I don't know anything about Windows. So now that we have our virtual environment activated, now we actually want to install the dependencies. And the way to do that is using pip. Pip is a package manager, and it helps you install things that you need to import into Python. So to actually install all these dependencies in the requirements.txt, what you can do is type in pip, or I need to do pip3, depends on what version you're using. I would do, let's see, I want to pip install. I want to do -r because I want to recursively install all of the dependencies in this folder, and I want to type in requirements.txt. So once you do that, you should get all of this, and then hopefully it should work. To actually check to see if it worked, you can type in python app.py, which actually runs your file, and you should see this text. If you incorrectly install the dependencies, then you should be getting some issue that, oh, Flask, it doesn't know what Flask is. So if you have an issue like that, raise your hand, Shingo can help you. So what exactly happened? It looks like something is running, but let's check that out. So let's actually open the Python file. I'm actually going to shut this down. Notice it says press Control C to quit, so I'm just going to do that so I can quit it. And I'm going to open up the Python file in my text editor. I happen to use VS Code, so if you type in code space dot, it should open. And yes, I trust everything. So if we take a look inside of the Python file, you'll see that we are importing Flask. Flask is where we're going to be using for routes or endpoints. And then this is just basic setup that you can find on the Flask documentation. Essentially, we're just creating a Flask object, and then it will run this application on 0.0.0.0, which is what this is. So right now we have a route here. It looks like the route is on /, which just means if I were to connect to this, I should get something that says hello world. So let's try to run this again. And I'm just going to go to this address on my computer and paste this. And it says hello world. So this is on your local host, so this is only on your machine. Later on, you'll learn how to actually deploy your backend apps, and you will be able to connect from them from other machines. And you also notice some debug text here. That can be useful when you're trying to debug. So we can do everything on your browser, but a nicer way to actually see these routes or responses from the server is using Postman. Can I get a show of hands on who has downloaded Postman? Okay, great. Okay, that's better. If not, don't worry, everything's recorded. So if you open Postman, this is what it should look like. Let's fix some things from the start. First, click on this gear, go on settings, and click dark mode. The next thing you want to do, I will actually leave that for later so you can see why you want to do it, because it can be annoying. But if I were to click on this, this will open up where I can actually create requests. Remember, requests are made by clients. And I'm going to send a request to a server, which is this Python app, right? And then it's going to respond with hello world. So we're going to try exactly what it did on the browser, but in Postman. So I'm going to copy this and paste it here. Notice this is a GET request because I'm trying to get what I want to get something from the server, which is hello world. So I will send this, and I get hello world here as well. So I will also show you how some things look like on browser and why you would prefer to do things on Postman, as well as just having much more functionality on Postman. So with that, let's actually make some routes. We're going to be using the CRUD method. So remember, we want to create things, we want to retrieve things, update things, and delete things. We're going to be making 5 routes. There are 4 CRUD routes, but we're going to make 5 because we'd like to get everything from our database, and we'd also like to get a specific thing from our database. So we're going to be making 5 routes. But before we can actually create routes, we need some kind of database. And for now, we're just going to use a dictionary, and we're going to create some kind of object. So does anyone have any suggestions for what kind of database we want to make? It can be a to-do list or a grocery list. Anyone have any preferences? Yep. To-do list. Okay, so let's do a to-do list. So a to-do list has tasks. So we're going to make a dictionary called tasks. And, okay. Didn't know what happened there. Let's just quit this. Okay, so what does a task consist of? Well, a task can have a description, and it's a to-do list, so we want to know if a task is done or not. So for the name, okay, one thing with databases is that every item in a database needs an ID, because there might be 2 tasks with the same description and the same whether or not they're done, but they are unique items. So that's why you need an ID, so that you have an identifier for each object. So for the key of this dictionary, I'm just going to use 0 because I want to be able to access items by their ID. And the first item is going to have a key with ID. This is also going to be 0. I'm also going to have a description, which is, let's just say, do laundry. And then I'm going to have a done field, which is false. Let's add, oh, need a comma here. We'll add one more item. And let's say, well, this is another item, so this ID is 1. And say, do the dishes, and this is also not done. So when we add another item, we're going to need to make this item have an ID of 2. So let's just have a counter here that we're going to need to use later when we're adding items. So let's just say task ID counter, and let's set this to 2. Okay, so now we have some kind of database. So first, let's try to actually get everything from this database. And the way we can do that is by making a new route. So notice this is how you make a route. So by default, Flask will make get routes for you if you don't provide a method. So we can just use the same syntax. Let's do app.route and oh, okay. Oh, okay. Let's make this big. Okay, too big. Let's see, too big. Okay, can you in the back see? Yes, perfect. Okay, sorry about that. So we don't want this to also be backslash because I think it'll take precedence, not sure. But we want to name this something, so let's just name it, we want to get the tasks, so let's say this will be tasks. And we need to make a new function, so we want to get all tasks. It doesn't matter what you name this. And now we want to actually get all tasks. So let's see. We have a dictionary, and we want to get every task, so we need a list, and we want to get all of these items. So the way we would do that is, let's say we'll have some variable called response. We want to make a dictionary, and we will say we have some tasks. So this is what our response is going to look like. So I want some field that says tasks, and I want to make a list, and I will put, say, tasks.items, and then I would want to return this response. Now, remember that responses come in JSONs, and to actually make this dictionary look like a JSON, we need to use the Json library. So let's go to the top and just import a library called JSON. Open the file.
Oh, gotcha.
And
It's already open.
let me see it. To actually make this dictionary look like a JSON, we want to do json.dumps. That's just how you do it. So let's see how this works. One nice thing about Flask, if I were to save this, you'll notice that this auto updates. That's I think it's called auto heart reloading. It's just going to, you don't need to shut down the Python app and reopen it. It's always going to be updating every time you save your file. So let us try to see if this works. So remember that if we get here, this is going to be hello world. But now, make this bigger too, yes. Okay. And if we were to type in tasks, because this is now what our endpoint is called, and I were to try to get, we have an error, perfect. Let's see, so it says dict items is not JSON serializable. It means there's an issue here.
What status code was that? Status code was that?
Yes, exactly. Okay, so notice every status code is always going to be on Postman. That's one benefit you get from using Postman. Whenever you have a bug, it's always going to be 500, so that means that there's a bug in your code. So we have 500, and yes, there is a bug in the code. So let's go back. The issue is I'm using task.items. That's going to give me pairs of the keys and the actual values. What I would actually want is the values, because that's what I'm interested in. So let's save this again, and let us try once more. And okay, once again, let me double check if I am doing things right. Let's try to convert this into a list. Okay, yes, they preferred that. Okay, so you don't want to actually put the brackets. You want to actually cast it to a list. So now you'll notice on the pretty text, I have this in something that actually doesn't look pretty. The reason is that this is an HTML, so if I were to click on JSON, it will actually make it look very pretty. So this is what we wanted. We have the values of our dictionary, and they are in a list, and then we have tasks here. So this worked. Notice that there is a 200 OK status. So this is the default. This is the default status code that Flask will return. You can also specify the status code that you want by putting a comma and also type in 200, which should do the same thing. So we can just try that again, and again, it put HTML. I want to put JSON. So this is the annoyance I was talking about. If you go back into settings and you look under general, you'll see language detection is auto. You can click here, set this to JSON, and it should always be in JSON when I send. Perfect. So now I can get all of my tasks, but I have no way of actually creating them. So before I move on to creation, are there any questions? Great. Okay. So we can move on to creation. Now, can anyone tell me what kind of HTTP code I would use to create objects? Anyone? Is it get or post? Post. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to use post now. And to do that, whenever I type in app.route, I will use the same endpoint. That is fine if I'm using different HTTP codes. And what I want to do is I want to type in methods, and I want to put a list and type in post. That's how I actually create a post route in Flask. So let's make another function. I want to create a task. And now what I want to do is every time I create a task, I want to also increment the ID, because remember that all of our items need to have a unique ID. But before we get into that, first of all, we need some way of actually, well, remember that the client needs to send something, some information for us to actually create a task. So if we look here, the client doesn't need to send us the ID because that's taken care of by the database. And we will assume that every time we create a new task, it's going to be not done by default. So all I'm going to expect from the client is a description. Now, the way to actually get post body from a client is using something called a request from Flask. And that is also something that we need to import. So if you type in from Flask import requests, we'll be able to use the post body from the client. So what we want to do is we want to make another response. And this is going to be something that we add to our dictionary. So we're going to need some kind of ID. So I'll just set this as -1 for now. We need a description, which we need to get from the request. So I'll just make this an empty string. And we need the done field, which the tasks are going to be not done by default. So we can just set this to false. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that this is an auto-incremented ID, and we can get that from our global variable here. So to actually access this, I want to change this later, so I need to type in global, and I want to put this here. And I want to use this as the ID. And because I want to auto-increment it, I'm going to need to increment this by 1 later. So we'll just add this. Now we want the description. To get the description, we need to get it from the post body. And to get the post body, what we need to do is request.data. Now, note that this is a JSON, and I want to convert, because remember that you send and you receive JSONs. I want to convert this JSON into a dictionary that I can actually use. And to do that, it's json.loads. So you use json.loads to convert a JSON to a dictionary, and json.dumps to convert a dictionary to a JSON. So when I do this, I'm expecting that the client is going to pass in a field called description, and it's going to have some kind of description. So what I can do is here I will type in, let's make a variable. Description is going to be equal to body. Now, one thing I can do is I can directly type in description although in the case where there is no description, this is going to crash and we're going to get a 500 error. So instead what we can do is we can do .get and we can get a description like this. This is much safer, and we can have a default value. And let's just say our default value is none. And then we can type this into here. Now we have our object. Now the last thing that we need to do is, okay, we made our object, but we need to add it to the database. Since our database is a dictionary, all we need to do is add this to the dictionary. Remember that the keys are the IDs, and so we can just type in tasks. We want to do task ID counter, and then we want to set this equal to the response. And then we need to return something. So how about we return the item that we created, so we can do a sanity check to make sure that it's actually the item we wanted to create. So we can return the response. Remember, it's just json.dumps response. And then we need a status code. So for status codes for creating things, you want 201. That's created. You can also just search it up. Here's a nice site. You'll see that this is 201. And then you can see like every other status code. You don't need to know these, but you can just search them up. So 201 is what you need to use whenever you create something. So let's save this, and let's hope that it works. Let's run this again. So in Postman, how do I actually post things? Well, first off, I need to click on get, and then switch to post. And to actually create the post body, I need to go into body. Now I want to go from body to raw, and then from raw I can set text to JSON, and then it should format everything nicely for me. So here, remember that what we're getting in the code is the description, and so that's all I need to pass in. So let's just do some key description, and I will pass in the backend lecture. And if we send this, you'll see that we have, so we had a 0 and a 1 as an ID. Now we have a 2. We have our description, which is do backend lecture, and it is done false because everything is false by default. So if I were to try getting all the tasks again, you'll notice that it is now in the database. One con with using a dictionary, which we'll get to in the end of the lecture. Let's speed through these. All right. So that's how you create a task. Now, one thing that would be nice is if I can get a specific task, now that I can actually create tasks. Let's say instead of getting everything, I just want to get a specific task. The way to do that is very similar to how I get everything. I can just copy this, because remember, it's a get route. But there's one specific thing. I want to get something, but I would need to get something using its identifier. And to do that, I need to put some more information into the endpoints. The way you want to do this in Flask is by putting some angle brackets, and I want this to be an int, and then I name what I'm actually trying to get. So this is going to be some task ID, and it's going to be of type int. And the way I would actually get this from the endpoint is by putting it as a parameter in the function. Let's also rename this function. Let's say get specific task. So if I were to do this, then I want my response to be not a list, but a specific value. Well, okay, so here's an edge case. Say I tried to get an identifier that doesn't exist. We need to account for that. So first, let's just try to get the task. So this task is going to be from the task dictionary. I'm going to get task ID. This is the key. So what happens if the task doesn't exist? So if not task, then I want to return an error because it doesn't exist. Can anyone tell me the status code for when something is not found? Yes, perfect. Okay, so I want to create a JSON. I can just make a dictionary in line, and I can say this is going to be an error, and the error message is going to be task not found. And then I want to pass in the second parameter as 404 because it defaults to 200. And this is assuming it doesn't exist. Now, if it does exist, then we can just return the task because it does exist. So we'll just put the task here, and then we can have 200. So let's see if this works. Now Now I can try to get all the tasks. You'll notice that the added item went away. That's the con of using the dictionary as a database, because every time you restart your code, the dictionary is going to reset. We'll get into databases in the next lecture. But let's try to get a specific task. So let's say I want to get the first task. Now, according to this, I just want to put an integer here, and it should detect it. So I will put, and one other thing, you always want to end your endpoints with slashes, just to make things consistent. So let's say I put a 0 and a slash, I tried to get, and we got the first item. We can try to get the second item as well. And let's try to get an item that doesn't exist. And you'll notice that it also takes care of that. Notice that it also has status code here. So this seems to be working. That is 3 routes, 2 more to go. We are a little bit over. If you need to go, it's fine. But I will get through these pretty quickly. So these are very similar to the previous ones. Now what we need to do, we've already done creation and we've done retrieval. Now we only want to update a task and we want to delete one. So yeah, we're gonna have to pause this.
I mean, I can just say it.
Okay, go ahead, yeah.
So if you are someone that needs to leave right now, I just want to quickly go over some action items. 1, make sure you're on the CMS. If you're not, email the Cornell AppDev courses email. 2, once you make sure you're on the CMS, look at the Join Campus Wire quiz. It has instructions for doing the Campus Wire. Do that by Saturday. That's the kind of deadline for that. 3, PA1 is due next Tuesday, so please get a head start on that. If you're confused about anything that Zola's been talking about or I said code-wise, I know a lot of this stuff is new. Campus Wire is here for you. We'll have office hours soon. It'll here for you. Please don't be afraid to reach out for help. And yeah, just one other quick note about academic integrity is if you have taken this course in previous semesters, we know a couple of students have kind of taken it and then dropped because they were super busy, which is totally valid. We have changed up the API specifications on the homework assignments a bit. So, you know, we would please don't reuse your code from previous semesters. 1, it won't work. 2, it's just good to get practice coding this stuff. So even if you've done it before, that must have been at least a semester ago. It's really good to get back into the swing of things by just trying to redo it again. So those are my thoughts on that. So I'll keep going.
Oh, what are office hours?
That's a great question. We're still figuring it out. We'll have it up within the next few days. The assignment's due on Tuesday.
And it'll be here?
It'll probably be in Rhodes. So we'll have the room set up. But if you really want to meet with us before we have office hours set up, privately message us on Campus Wire and we can work something out.
Cool. Okay. Any other questions? Great. Okay. So we have 2 more routes. We want to update a task, and we also want to be able to delete a task from our to-do list. So now, with the ability to update a task, I will be able to mark a task as done. That's one thing that we couldn't do when we're creating a task, because it doesn't make sense to set a task as done when we create it, because what's the point of putting it on the to-do list? So to create a task, first let's create a function, update task. And when we want to create a task, or when we want to update a task, we need to update a specific task. So we're going to make a route for that as well. So because this is a specific task, let's go over here. I'm going to make a change to a task by sending information through a request, and so I would need a post request for that. So we're going to add to the methods a post. And with that, remember that we also are using a specific task, and so this needs to be passed in as a parameter. So with the task ID, first we need to do a check to see if the task exists, because we can't update a task that doesn't exist. So you can essentially just copy this. The nice thing about Backend is that you can do a lot of copying and it just works. So we check to see if the task exists. If it doesn't, then it's 404. Otherwise, we can actually check some information. So remember that we are sending a post, meaning that we have a body with request data. So we can just do that as well. So I'm going to make body is equal to json.loads, because we want to convert the JSON to a dictionary. And we want to request data. And then from there, now, as opposed to the add task, now I can also pass the description and whether or not a task is done, because I want to be able to mark task as done. So let's just make a variable called description. We can get from it description. And one thing that we would want to do is say, you don't need to pass all, well, I'll actually show you that. So let's also do done because we want to be able to update whether or not something is done. So once we've gotten these fields, we can type in response because we want to respond with something. Now, actually, wait, no, we don't want to create a response. We want to update something that exists. So we already have the task here, and we just want to update it. So what we can do is we can, okay, instead of creating a description variable, we can just modify it directly. So we can just do task description, and we can set that equal to body.get, and we can do the same thing there to just make our code much cleaner. Okay, and once we have updated the task, we can just simply return it, say, okay, this is what the task looks like now, and then if we were to get the task, we should see that it is updated in the database. So we want to do json.task, and once again 200. So let's check to see if this is working. So first of all, let's check to see what's actually in our database. Should just be the first two. Let's try to update, do the dishes to, let's see. We want to go in post and we want to edit that specific thing. And if I were to just hit enter here, I still have my body from before. So it should update this to do backend lecture. So if I were to hit enter, we get do backend lecture, but then we also get null here. The reason that happened is because if we go back, we never specified a parameter for done. So what will happen is it's just going to return none, and that's why the Boolean was set to null. So to fix this, we can just have a default value be the original value. So we can just copy this and then put it after the comma. Okay, we can save. This is going to reset the database. And now if I were to post again, now it's working properly. So if I were to actually get that specific one, it will show like this. And if I were to do this, this also works properly. Now let's say I just want to set this to true because I haven't finished a backend lecture, nor have I done laundry. Okay, let's just say we finished a backend lecture. So we'll do done, we'll set this to true. We don't need to modify the description anymore. And we want to set this task to done. So let's do that. And now we want this to be a post. When we do this, this is now set to true. So if I were to get it, it is also true. And if we get all the tasks, this is also true. So we successfully updated the task. Now, with that being done, we want to also be able to delete tasks from our database. Before we go to that, are there any questions with updating? Cool, okay. So now we want to delete. It's very similar to everything else we've done, except this is a new method. So what we want to do is, as we've done before, we want to delete something specific. So we need to, once again, do tasks. We want to type in int and task ID because we want to delete something specific. Now the only difference is that the methods are now going to be delete. So with that, when you go in Postman, what I want to do is click on get, and I want to use delete instead for something specific. So let's just make a function, delete task, and it's I need to pass in a parameter because it's inside of the endpoint. Now I want to first try to get the task to know if it exists or not. So we can just reuse this code because that's what this is doing. And perfect. So if it doesn't exist, it's going to be 404. Otherwise, we actually want to delete it from our database. Now, to delete something from a dictionary, we can just type in del, which is delete, and we want to go in our main dictionary and delete this key value pair. Once we've done that, what we can do is we can just return the item that we deleted in case we want to do anything with it. So we will just dump that. And then 200 because we've successfully deleted it. So we'll hit save, and now let's try to delete our tasks. So let's try to delete the first task. Okay, so it returned it to us. Let's try to get it now. It is not found because we deleted it. And if we get everything, it's not there anymore. Same thing with trying to delete the first. And now we can get everything. And now we have nothing else. So this is all you need for the homework. These 5 routes, right, are essentially what you're going to be using to create a kind of Reddit. And yep, that's it with the lecture. If you have any other questions, you can come forward. And yeah, thank you for coming.